Hello, everybody. It's Dr. Rick Wallace. Dropping in on you for a brief moment. I want to take a small part of your day to talk to you about something extremely important. Let me start by saying, as we are moving into the heart of what we know as the holiday season, I think it's immensely important that we understand that uh, mental health and mental health conditions are a immensely important part of our community makeup that we give very little attention and time to. And during the holidays, we will see and experience a heightened level of depression, especially. It's important to understand that the holidays can be a very rough time for people, and that while many will attempt to mask it and pretend that everything is okay, a lot of people will suffer in silence during the holidays. This will be, while it will be the highlight of many people's year, it will be the most darkest moment for others. And it's important for us to be aware of that. It's important for us to understand it. It's important for us to engage others with an understanding of the fact that not everyone will be in the best frame of mind during this time of the year. And so it's important for us to care for others, to think about others, to reach out and check on others. If someone has lost a loved one, if someone is perpetually single, that's huge during this time of the year. If someone has recently gone through something, or if you know there's a person that has a proclivity to sort of sink in times when other people are celebrating for whatever reason, I think that it's important that we reach out to these people and we show them the love, the kindness, and the care that is necessary. Also, we need to be aware of the need to help these people find help. We need to stop taking the easy way out. I'm not attacking anyone for their prayer life. I believe a prayer life has a powerful place in a person's life when it's used properly, but at the same point in time, there is no substitute for the help that people need when they're struggling with real, true mental issues, mental illnesses. And I think that we need to really, truly, truly, truly get a grip on that. I think that's something that we struggle with as a group, as a culture, and I think that we need to do a better job of that. So look at the people around you and make sure that you show the love, the kindness, and attention that's necessary to let people know that they are not standing alone. And again, when possible and when necessary, assist them in getting the help that they need. That is at the pinnacle of this particular message. Now, let's talk about living in a hostage situation. Wow. There are far too many of us who are currently being held hostage by our past hurts. What do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is that you've gone through something in life. You've been through something. You've been hurt. You've been upset, disappointed, betrayed, abandoned, whatever it is. Maybe you're struggling with some of your own past decisions, some of your own past failures, but you refuse to release them. You refuse to let them go. You refuse to process what has happened in the past and release it. You're literally being held hostage by failures. I tell people this all the time. Pain and suffering are extremely distinct in their makeups, in their realities. Pain is something in this life that you will find is inevitable, no matter how much you attempt to circumvent the vicissitudes, struggles, and heartaches, pains, and disappointments of life. You're going to find that they will ultimately find you. That's pain. You can't avoid it. It's inevitable. But suffering is a choice. Suffering is that decision that you're going to identify with your pain. You're going to become identified with that moment. That moment becomes an indelible part of who you are. It stops being an event in your life and it starts becoming your constant reality. That's suffering. That's when you go through something and you decide to just sit there and live in it. That suffering is holding you hostage. You identify with the pain so much that you don't even know where to begin to release it. Let me explain something. There's some of you out there that are still holding on to hurt that someone caused you 3, 4, 5, 10, 15 years ago. You haven't spoke to them. You hold on to it every time you get a chance. You're talking about it. You're bringing it up. You won't let it go. You don't understand the damage that that does to your emotions, your psyche, your physical state. You don't understand it, but you just keep bringing it up. You won't let it go. And a lot of you are doing it because you're waiting on that person to admit that they were wrong. You're waiting on that person to apologize. Well, here's the truth. Here's the truth. There's a very good possibility that they're never going to attempt to make amends. There's a very good possibility that they're never going to admit they're wrong and they're never going to apologize. You cannot spend the rest of your life waiting on someone else to apologize for what they did to you. Here's why. Them not apologizing, them doing, first of all, them harming you and doing you wrong, them not apologizing or admitting that they're wrong is an internal issue that they're struggling with. It's their issue. It's something that they've got to fix within themselves. You can't walk around with their brokenness on your back. That's what you're doing when you're consistently waiting on them to find themselves before you empower yourself. Some of you are not even living life at all. You're just doing time. You're waking up every day, going through life, beating up on yourself, downing yourself. Your self-talk is just horrible. Let me explain something to you. The two most powerful conversations that you will ever have in your life, the two most powerful conversations, no matter how many times you have them, the two most powerful conversations are the conversation, number one, the conversations you have with yourself about yourself. Number two, the conversation you have with others about yourself. That self-talk, how you describe yourself, how you describe your reality, what you say about yourself, what you think about yourself, is the program or the software that you're uploading into this powerful computer called your brain and your mind. And it is the program that will be run. You are constantly running your program off of your self-talk, what you tell yourself. Now, there are other influences as well, but nothing more powerful than your self-talk, nothing more than the conversations you have with yourself about. What are you telling yourself when you have these conversations with yourself? What are you, man, if this wouldn't have only happened, then I would be here. If I never had a did this, then I would be here. If this person wouldn't have done this to me, I would. You consistently are setting limits on your life based on a perception of your reality that locks you into a darkness that you refuse to let go of or that you can't find your way out of because your self-talk is constantly speaking on the negative. Your self-talk is constantly reminding you of the hurt. Your self-talk is setting up the basis and the foundation of fear. And that's why you won't move. That's why you won't take the risks that are required to achieve exceptional and extraordinary things. You've been locked into a place of suffering because you constantly remind yourself of what happened to you in the past. You're going to have to get to a point to where you understand that first and foremost, you are not required to manage the sins, the difficulties, the brokenness, the lack of moral turpitude of anyone else. When someone does you something wrong, what you need to do is evaluate how you got in that situation. What can you do better moving forward? And how do you protect yourself? But you move forward. You don't allow yourself to get stuck because they're broken. Is some of you right now still suffering and struggling because you were molested as a child or abused as a child? And that's a horrible thing to have to go through. But let me explain something to you. It's time for you to rescue yourself from that heartache. It's time for you to recover and reclaim the power and the innocence that was stolen from you in that moment when you were a child. It's time for you to start living in the fullness of your potential. It's time for you to sit up and say, you know what? I can't carry the sins of that person on my back any longer. It wasn't my fault. And you've got to sit up and release it, because they may never make amends. They may never admit what they did. They may never sit up and come to you and say, I'm so sorry for the pain and the hurt I caused you. I know you want it. I know you want it, but it may never happen. And you've got to make up in your mind that if it never happens, I'm still good. You've got to reclaim the power that's taken. It's some of you that are going through hardships right now and you can't get past it. You won't release it because you never knew your father, or maybe even both parents abandoned you. I know how that feels. I've been there, but at some point you've got to release it. You've got to reclaim that potential and that power. You've got to access and embrace the fullness of the potential that is inundated within your physical and spiritual DNA, that thing that's a part of your design that demands greatness of you. You've got to embrace that. You've got to look back. Stop mortgaging your future to pay for your past. Stop it. I don't care if it's decisions you made. I don't care if it's something someone else did. It's time to sit up and process it and let it go. You can't move forward looking back. If you think you can, try driving while looking backwards and see how far that gets you. Know what's behind you, because what's behind you is meant to be a part of a learning process, a part of a development process, a part of a strengthening process, a part of the development of resilience and endurance. But it's not meant to be your reality forever. It's not meant to lock you in and take you hostage. You've got to free yourself of that past pain. You've got to let it go. Why? Because the essence of who you are is in what you become, not what you have been through. What you become is not what you've been through, but the way you respond to it. I guarantee you there's nobody you're going to talk to. I don't care where they are in life, how well they've done, how much they've accomplished, and they can tell you they've circumvented life struggles, that they've been able to find a way around engaging the vicissitudes of life, that they have never really truly had any hardship or pain. If they are, they're lying. What I can tell you is that is something that everybody has to go through. Does it mean that what you're going through isn't real? Does it mean that what you've been through doesn't hurt? Does it mean that what you've been through didn't have a massive traumatic impact on your life? Absolutely not. But what it means is that you can recover. What it means is that you can become stronger. What it means is that you have not only a right, but a responsibility to your design and to your purpose to release it, to take hold of what's in front of you, to become what you are designed to be. A lot of you, because you have been taken hostage by your past, tend to consistently make settlements. Let me give you an idea about what I mean when I say settlements. If anybody's ever been in a car accident, you probably have had to reach out to a personal injury attorney. And that personal injury attorney may have told you, well, you know what, we're going to take the case. And if we don't win the case, you don't have to pay. But what they normally end up doing 85 to 90% of the time is not going to trial, settling with the insurance company and giving you what you agree on. They'll come to you and say, okay, we got them to agree to, and then you say whether or not it's a settlement. It's not what you probably could have gotten if you fought and actually followed through. It's coming to a point and saying, we don't really want to go through all of this. We don't want to take the risk of maybe not winning the case, so we're going to take a settlement. Another way that you get settlements, and we should really understand this, is that you get into trouble with the law, and you're sitting there and your attorney is talking to the district attorney, and they're looking at it, and they determine that neither one of them really want to take it to trial because it's too iffy. And so they say, okay, here's what's going on. I know that you probably didn't do it, but we could go to trial and you could lose. And so they take a settlement known as a plea deal. It's not the best thing for you, but it's the most expedient. It's the most easiest. It's the most comfortable way at that moment to get something, instead of really truly standing on what you know to be right, standing on what you know to be what it is that you desire, and absolutely unequivocally going after it. That is what should be done. But many of you, because you're being held hostage, are constantly entering into settlements with life. You know, I would really like to be doing this, but that calls for me to get out of my comfort zone. That calls for me to really actually engage something. Some of you are taking settlements in relationships. Some of you are taking settlements by the job you work on. Some of you are taking settlements by how you move about and engage in friendships. Some of you are taking settlements by how you sit up and demand things of yourself. You know you're not living at the fullness of your potential. You know you're not challenging yourself. You know you're not truly reaching for anything. You know that there's a whole lot more inside of you, but you found a place of comfort. So you are entering into a settlement with life. You don't give me too many challenges. You don't bring me too much pain. And I'm going to sit right here and I'm going to do what I do here because it's comfortable. Well, see, living at the level of your design, that thing that's indicative of your purpose, that thing that the Creator gave you, that thing right there demands excellence from you. It demands that you invest all of you. It demands that you shake off anything that happens to you and you rise up. No, I'm not insensitive to anything that you've gone through. I've had my share of heartache. I've had my share of struggles. I've had my share of difficulty. I've been flat on my back, but this is what I can tell you. That at no time that I was flat on my back that I sit up and say, well, you know what? I'll just be okay with standing up. No, I know what my design demands of me, and I am demanding that of myself every day. I've got a choice. I can look back and look at the hurt. I can look back and look at the fact that I never knew my father the first time I saw him was at his funeral. I can look at that and say, man, that's good enough for me to get a comfort pass. I could just get through life and get, hold down a job and pay my bills and do okay. And everybody will understand I didn't have a father. My mother wasn't really there. I was reared by my great-grandparents. I could sit up and say, man, that's kind of like abandonment, isn't it? Well, shoot, man, that ought to be worth at least 5 or 10 comfort points. I should be able to just kind of cruise through life because nobody's really going to expect a lot from me. No father present, mama not really there, reared by great-grandparents. All of that kind of stuff doesn't normally lead to anything of any true intrinsic value in a life of performance and accomplishment. Or I can sit up and say, you know what? I'm not my parents' failures. And I have something inside of me that demands excellence of me. Sometime, at some point, I didn't even understand it. I just knew that there was something inside of me demanding that I perform at a high level. And then it did not allow me to use what other people had done to me as a form of escape from my responsibility. I know you're going through hurt. Trust me. It's many of you that I feel your pain. But this is what I'm going to tell you. And I hope you get this. And then I'm going to be pretty much done. Life is about decisions. Life is about decisions. First and foremost, your circumstances are normally predictable because they are normally the coming to harvest of thoughts that you've emitted, thoughts, expectations, and ideas that you've presented to the universe in the past. And then others are simply environmental. A lot of people, once you become an adult, anything that someone does to you, you have a certain sense of culpability in that. What do I mean by that? I mean that even when someone does something to you that's wrong, while they have to own their decision to wrong you, you have to own the culpability of providing them the opportunity. In other words, we literally have in us the opportunity, the capacity, and the ability to discern who a person is. We tend to find ways to ignore it when we see other benefits in that person. One of the things that really scares me about our women today is that they have these checklists of what they're looking for in a man. And if the man's checklist checks off in most areas, they tend to ignore the feelings of discernment that telling them there's something wrong with this guy. If he has a promising career, if he has a six-figure income, if he owns his own home and he drives a nice car, if he's well dressed, if he's chivalrous, if opens doors, very polite, all those things, man. I mean, that's the checklist for what a man is, but we've lost our sense of spiritual awareness. We want to see the checks on the list, but we don't want to pay attention to what our gut or our intuition or our discernment is telling us about a person. And then when that person gets in and becomes what our discernment told us they would become, despite checking off all the lists, our entire equilibrium is disrupted. We've got to own those type of situations, but we don't have to bask in the moment. And see, when you bask in the moment of heartache, you create suffering. It's like I told you, suffering is a choice. What you do is you look up and say, okay, I've got to learn from that. I've got to become better. I've got to understand that, okay, this is not how I do it. What I've got to understand is I got to start paying attention. One of the most powerful books that I've ever read that talks about this is this book by Gladsdale. I can't remember the guy's first name. I read a number of his books. I can't remember why. Malcolm Gladwell. The book is called Blink, and it talks about the power of human beings to have this instinct within them that literally tells them what they need to know about a situation or a person instantly. And in this book, he talks about these experiments where people were placed in situations in which some were exposed to a person for a matter of seconds, others were exposed to people over weeks, others were allowed to look at video of the person while other people were allowed to listen, some people, and all these different variations of exposure. And what they found out, when asked specific questions about the person that they couldn't know because they didn't know the person, those who had the least amount of exposure, those who were just given a glimpse, had to literally trust their instinct were right more than the people who had been around them for the longest period of time. It's about that natural intuition that was put inside of us by the Almighty, by the Creator, to guard against a lot of the things that we allow ourselves to go to because we think we're smarter than our design. When you go back and look at how many times did you get that feeling? And then, no matter of fact, in this book, there's a part in the book where this woman was married to this guy for 5 years, and when he cheated on her, and she kept saying there was no indication, there were no signs, there were no red lights, and I mean no red flags. It just came out of nowhere. She never saw it coming. He was just a wonderful husband. He was awesome. And so the psychologist is getting with her, and he starts to go back at the point she found out her husband cheated. And they go back step by step over the whole marriage. And there's all this stuff, this good stuff, and this is good stuff, and this is good stuff. And there's no signs in the marriage that she can sit up and talk about. She's trained herself to ignore them, first of all. But let's go back. They get all the way back to the day she met him. And because she's so comfortable in this exchange now, she's not guarding against what she's saying. She's just openly speaking. She says, when I first met him, there was something about him I didn't like. But he was professional. He was established in his career. He was very courteous and nice and polite and chivalrous. He never expected me to pay. All the things that women put on the checklist. He checked them off. She ignored the intuition. She ignored what her spirit was telling her. She went with the checklist. She outsmarted herself and ended up in a situation that she could have avoided. Now, here's the thing. And this is what gets us back to what we're talking about today. Here's the thing. It's done now. You made that decision 5 years ago. Now this guy's cheated on you. You've got to process that moment, determine what's best for you, make the decision to move on. You cannot wallow in your misery. You cannot live and identify with every mistake that you've ever made. You got to learn from them. You got to grow from them. You got to climb up. You got to become what you know you are designed to become. It is within your DNA. Like I've told you before, I have never come across a person in my experience in life. Have I come across a person, whether I was acting professionally, whether it was a casual introduction, whether it was on a personal level, come across anyone that did not have genius in their DNA, spiritually and physically. I don't care if they had Down syndrome. I don't care if they had autism. I don't care if they had ADHD. I don't care if they didn't know their father. I don't care if they came from impoverished background. I don't care if they had been abused as a child. I don't care what the situation was. There was still something planted inside of their DNA that demanded greatness of them. And all we had to do is find it, tap into it, and live it. The problem is, instead of tapping into the power that your design is sitting on, you're studied, embodied into your past, engrossed by your past, encompassed with your past. You would rather talk about what that person did with you than to explore the power you have to live life at the level of your design. You are so caught up in your misery, you can't shake free of it. Let it go. There's no power in living in the past. Let it go. There's something in front of you greater. There's something in, I don't care. And here's the other side of it. Some of us are so caught up in our past accomplishments that we're held hostage by. There's something great in front. I don't care what you've done in the past. That's something greater in front of you, because there's always room to grow. The more you sit up and you get caught up in what you've done, you lose sight of what you should be doing. I'm not saying that you shouldn't revisit it. You know, the Bible, I think it was Lamentations where Jeremiah said, "These things I recall to mind, therefore I have hope." Sometimes you got to revisit past accomplishments to remind yourself that it's possible, that where you're at right now isn't the end, that there's something greater out there, that you can do exceptional and extraordinary things, that the best is yet to come. But what I can tell you is, until you release that hurt, until you let it go, until you shake free of it, until you give yourself permission to live, you're going to find yourself constantly stressed out, anxious, frenetic, unglued, miserable, feeling helpless. You got to rescue yourself from your past. You got to free yourself from that hostage situation. I dare you to just take a moment to evaluate where you're at right now and tell yourself, I am no longer a victim of my past. My future is bright. Write that down and read it to yourself 3 or 4 times a day at the same time every day. I am no longer a hostage to my past. My future is bright and full of opportunities. Doesn't mean it's coming easy. Doesn't mean that it's going to miraculously fall into place. It simply means that everything that you need is hidden within your design. If you're not yet that person, you have it within your design to become that person. You get what you are. And so if you don't have the things you desire, become it. You got to become it before you can have it. But you can't become it if you're locked up in a love affair with your past. It can't happen. But I dare you to free yourself from that hurt. Let it go. There's nobody in this world that important that you should sacrifice your entire life based on their failures. Think about that for a minute. Man, it's an awesome honor to be able to just sit down and share what life has taught me, regardless to where I've gained the knowledge or where I've gained the experience. It's an honor to be able to share with you guys, to be able to give to you guys in the manner that I am. And I hope that in some way it's inspiring you. I really do. Before I leave, I want to remind you what I talked about at the beginning of this video. This can be a very trying time of year for a lot of people. Mental health issues, mental illness is a major influence on a lot of what we see going on in the world around us. We tend to take it lightly. We tend to want to pretend that it isn't happening. We tend to want to sweep it under the rug. This is going to be a time when a lot of people will enter prolonged states of depression. And we need to be aware of that. We need to be keenly cognizant of what people are going through so that we know how to engage them. We know how to manage our conversations with them. We know how to speak and uplift them. Don't be empty in your words. Don't be condescending. Don't be assumptive, but be caring. Be aware of what you're saying and to whom you're saying it. And when you feel that there's a need, you need to make sure you help people find the help that they need. With that being said, there are some, don't forget to get Critical Mass, the book Critical Mass. It's a book that literally is a comprehensive guide to living life at the level of your design. It's a full, detailed breakdown of the processes I use and the philosophies and concepts that underwrite the work I do with my clients. And it's laid out in detail. This is an extremely comprehensive book. And I think that it will be a blessing to anyone who sat down and invested themselves in it. Life is an investment. What you invest in yourself is what you can expect to get out of it, nothing more. So you set the expectations of what you can look for in your life by how much you invest in yourself. So anyway, that's that. As I always say, I'm going to down the. I'm not leaving an ounce of my potential on the playing field, on the battlefield in life. I'm not taking it to the grave with me. It does me no good there. I'm leaving it locked into my legacy. And I encourage you to do the same thing. It was an honor to sit here this morning and talk with you. And guys, whatever you do, enjoy your day. Find a way to make this day a fulfilling day, a day of joy, a day of peace, a day of happiness. And I don't care what you're going through. It can be discovered. It can be embraced. It can be experienced. You've got to learn how to do that. And with that being said, I'm going to check out of here and I'll see you soon. Peace.